being kept by a jackdaw. At a country fair, a couple called Dave and Di Nelstrop came from Bow, in Dorset, to sell tansy pancakes, bringing skillets, a brazier, a mound of flour, and eggs. They drew customers to their tent by the good smell. Behind a striped awning there was a stack of wooden cages, which they'd carried with them, each with an injured bird. One was a large crow, a raven they referred to as Aubrey. His door was left open, and he caught me in his glare. Between bites, washed down with a blue mug of sweet tea, I began confessing to something I'd always yearned for. Ever since childhood, they looked patiently quizzical. I've wanted... I paused again, transfixed by the crow, hopping on black legs, scanning me with a needle eye, black as those Victorian jet stones from Whitby. He'd expose a scarlet throat, and then he'd caw in my face, with a sound as old as Egypt, and that said, "I know you. I've pecked your ancestors' bones and nibbled your DNA, and I'll penetrate your soul with my carrion cries." Aubrey's eerie presence triggered an old boyhood dream of having a jackdaw on your shoulder, like a pirate. Whispering secrets in your ear, this jackdaw would speak in a language that only you could understand. You and the jackdaw. You and this bird. A medieval bond, like Arthur's falcon, trained by Merlin. Only a jackdaw would be much more worldly wise, independent, and even faintly criminal, lifting jewels from open windows if you were broke, teaching you things no one else knew. As I watched Aubrey retire to his cage, demanding food, and a cloth draped on top so he could sleep, dusk settled, and Aubrey fell silent. Then I blurted it out. "I've always wanted to look after a jackdaw." Dave Nelstrop said casually, "Oh, we got one. A fledgling. It was too poorly to bring. It's being fed by a dripper, with touches of brandy. It just fell out of its nest in a bell tower." They promised to bring it when next they were passing. "Does it have a name?" I asked when they arrived. "Could call it Jack," Dave suggested. "Surname of Daw," he grinned, "until something else better occurs." But Jack Daw seemed workmanlike, and so it stuck. Then I stared, bewildered by this quaint creature, once childishly romanticized. It was radically different from the parrot on Long John Silver's tricorn hat. At close quarters, its feral behavior was dominated by a consuming curiosity. But who was it exactly? This bird that had lived its life in a tower, then fallen, and whose cowl made it look like a hooded monk. It would wake at dawn and shadow me till dusk. We'd find mealworms, then warm up some milk. The one fact it knew was that in order to survive, I'd have to be converted into its servile minion. So Jack behaved like some tyrannical movie star, demanding full attention day and night, with a vampire's knack of spotting the submissive, then getting them to run endless errands. Almost immediately, I became the bird's captive, existing solely to attend to its needs, wondering if I'd experience Stockholm Syndrome, which means you fall in love with your captors. But this bonsai pterodactyl was quite hard to love, a dive-bombing comet of energy and appetite. At daybreak its beak was pushed between my lips, searching for a morsel from last night's meal. A bony road drill picking at your teeth was how Jack alerted you to the unpalatable fact that instead of being an independent human being, you are now mobile carrion, ruled by a bird. My body clock was retuned to keep jackdaw hours, to wake at dawn, then to feel tired at dusk. It was unsettling to fall asleep as soon as it got dark and realize how electricity had made you a moth. Yet there were long days of elation, digging up a patch with a jackdaw perched on your head, keeping watch from its new tower, and swooping down to display its skills as a metal detector. Buried bottle tops would be brought to the surface, along with fragments of bright silver foil, invoking the ghosts of picnics past. Then sixpences were teased out and offered as treasure trove. "He's trading you level," an old countryman said, stopping by to watch such transactions. "Give him food and shelter, he gives you coin. What you'd call satisfaction all round." When the philosopher Thoreau was hoeing his garden, a young sparrow alighted on his shoulder. Thoreau said he felt more distinguished by that event than by an epaulette. I knew what he meant. Another visitor, Bernie Skuse, a poacher from Bristol, said, "Tell you what we used to do, boy. Sharpen the edge of a coin and set it under his tongue. Cuts through the tendon, then he'll talk." I thanked Bernie, but I said I wasn't sure that I wanted to torture Jack into speaking my language. I guess he'd just tell me what I'd taught him to say, and I imagined he had thoughts of his own. Bird-like thoughts, from a miniature mind, eons old, that had evolved feathers and grown them from skin. Initially earthbound, it had had Icarus's dream of flying itself higher and higher till it stayed aloft. I'd now also dream nightly. I had wings on my shoulders. I steered with the feathers sprouting from my heels. And I'd wonder, since I woke feeling a firm ally of this elf, if he could have been the projectionist of such flights. Then, gradually, I suspected that he was preparing to go. Being mended, the fierce bond that he'd made, first with the Nelstrops, his rescuers, and later with myself, was now weakening at the sight of other birds. Each evening there were flocks of rooks and jackdaws passing overhead on their way to the estuary. Jack looked up at them and gave a quietly uncertain cry, belonging neither to one world nor the other. Each day was spent on my shoulder, and each day he'd fly off, and would always come back. He flew in circles, but they'd increase in diameter, as the time would come for him never to return. I'd look up at the sky, studying tree after tree, and ask people if they'd seen a jackdaw. "Pinch something of yours?" That's what they do. And I would realize that in a way he had. When seeing a clattering of jackdaws, the collective noun for these gregarious birds that pair bond for life, I'd be more alerted by their gatherings than by anything else. The jackdaw tribes' peripatetic parliaments, spread across fields, seething carpets of glistening flecks. I'd scrutinize each jackdaw in turn, watch them scavenging a sheep's carcass on the hillside, hoping to jog one avian memory. A judgmental friend said, "You shouldn't have tamed it. You've put its life in peril." I heard of someone who took a bird in, then, when they released it, it was so tame it landed on the barrel of a sportsman's gun. Got itself blown to bits, didn't it? I became troubled. I hadn't tamed it, but undeterred, they finished off their unsolicited obituary with, "Just a bird, wasn't it?" I then buried myself in folklore, it being less brutal. To country science, nothing's just a bird that can foretell rain or death when jackdaws nest in a chimney. A jackdaw can signify a birth whenever seen on the rooftop. Each movement in nature is meant to be read. quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, contains all the letters of the alphabet, as does jackdaws love my big sphinx of chords. Yet, no arrangement of the letters solves the riddle. The riddle that I was left with, far harder to resolve than the age-old riddle of the Sphinx. What goes on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and on 3 legs at evening time? The answer being man himself, crawls first on 4, then stands on 2, then on 3, counting his stick. But the impossible riddle the jackdaw had posed was why man has determined to end his life with no legs at all. Yet, while civilization proves to be of questionable value in helping him to find his niche in the universe, a jackdaw can behave as if completely assured of its place, and with a comic beauty that's close to perfection. Someone told me that Hermann, Kafka's father, had a sign in front of the family's fancy goods shop in Prague. It was a painting of a jackdaw set above their trade name, for Kafka means jackdaw in Czech. I discovered Kafka had always identified with his namesake. He described a jackdaw kept by the coal merchant near Tian Cathedral as my relative, saying he sympathized with its longing to disappear between the stones. Kafka told the young poet Gustav Janusz he'd find relations with animals easier than with men, adding that animals are closer to us than human beings. The coal merchant's jackdaw struck a chord. Unsurprisingly, for birds are the uncredited inventors of music, and all of them continue singing for joy, cost-free, unlike man's derivative warblings for profit. I hope you love birds too, Emily Dickinson asked. It is economical. It saves going to heaven. I do. It is. It does. I still see that questing figure. I pick up on his cries, the "Jack, Jack," 8 times, and the eyes, the pale blue iris, and the intense pupils studying things miles away. Jackdaw, a foot long, black shot with steel blue, grey neck, demonically sprightly, bustling and strutting, jerkily swaggering, then pausing to shuffle along the ground as he turns everything over, clods and stones, searching for something reflective to present with a flourish, while ripping up rival possessions, like books, into shreds. Anyone, Kafka said, who keeps the ability to see beauty never grows old. A jackdaw's hop puts a skip in my step.